They said diplomacy was mankind's greatest strength, but I've learned something different out here. Far from Earth, buried deep in the cold, echoing chambers of the Galactic Council. Strength doesn't come from words. It comes from knowing when to stop talking and start making people bleed. I adjusted the black cuffs of my uniform as I stood in the center of that colossal chamber. Lights flickered above, scanning my face like I was some kind of dangerous animal. And maybe I was. The Thalreen Chancellor sat high on his perch, blue-scaled, 7 feet tall, and looking down at me like I was dirt under his clawed feet. Beside him, the insectoid Zikar clicked its mandibles impatiently. Other delegates, some with tendrils, others with gills, others just glowing blobs, watched from their glass towers like they were judging a circus act. "Ambassador," the Chancellor began, his voice slick like oil, "your people continue to violate the ceasefire protocol signed under Article 14 of the Outer Rim Peace Accords." I stared at him. Just stared. The bastard had the audacity to lecture Earth after his fleets glassed 2 of our colonies. Children turned to ash. Entire cities turned to radioactive craters. And they call that a ceasefire violation? I leaned into the mic and said nothing for a second. Let the silence bite. Let it get uncomfortable. "You bombed Vega 4, I said flatly. The room shifted. You could feel it. Nervous twitches, quiet clicks, murmurs through translator drones. "That colony was arming insurgents," the Zikar ambassador hissed, her voice like breaking glass. "Insurgents?" I laughed, cold and humorless. "It was a farming colony. You vaporized a city of wheat farmers and school children." "They were warned," the Thalreen growled. I took a deep breath. My fists were trembling. Not from fear. No, from holding back the rage that had been building since I saw the drone footage. A little girl trying to run from the blast, dragging her baby brother behind her, before both were disintegrated. "Earth has filed multiple diplomatic protests. We've shown restraint, we've sent envoys, we played your little council games, and you answered with warheads." The chamber crackled to life with more voices, protests, objections. Someone even laughed. Laughed. I stepped forward toward the central dais. The security drones didn't stop me. They should have. "You wanted a weak, obedient species to mine your outer worlds and fill your armies. But Earth doesn't kneel. Not anymore." The Thalreen narrowed his eyes. "Are you threatening this council, human?" I leaned into the microphone. "I'm not threatening, I'm announcing." A hologram appeared above my left shoulder, a projection fed from Earth's Black Ops network. One by one it showed their ships, dozens of them, then hundreds, then thousands, destroyers, battlecruisers, carriers, all warping out of stealth from behind asteroid belts and moons, real-time feeds, live footage, coordinated attacks. I looked each delegate dead in the eye. "You wanted war? You got it." Screams erupted. Sirens began to blare. The council guards drew weapons. But I didn't move. I just watched the panic unfold. That was the thing about humanity. We always give warnings. But when no one listens... We stopped talking. Panic exploded inside the council chamber like someone had fired a weapon. Delegates scrambled, robes fluttering and tech devices dropping to the floor. Some clung to their assistants, others barked into their translators, begging for updates. Guards rushed in from all sides, sleek and polished, but overwhelmed by the sudden eruption of pure fear. One of the aquatic race ambassadors even slipped out of his liquid chamber, his slippery form writhing against the polished floor as he flailed and screamed. I stood completely still. That's what real power looked like, when you could cause hysteria without lifting a finger. The Thalreen Chancellor slammed his gavel-like claw onto the armrest of his floating podium. "Guards, detain the human. He has violated..." "Don't," I said, just loud enough. They froze. Not because of the volume of my voice, but the finality in it. The way I spoke it like a verdict. I turned slightly, pointing to the hologram feed still hovering over my shoulder. One screen split into 3. Live footage from Vega V's orbit, the ruins, the ashes, then, suddenly, Earth's war fleet materializing from the edge of deep space like ghosts emerging from the dark. Stealth tech, once just myth and rumor in the halls of the galaxy's elite empires, now shown in full display. "You thought we were still using the ships we sold you," I said, slowly pacing toward the main platform. "The old engines, the outdated weapons, that was bait. What's arriving now is the real fleet." Behind me, the council guards hesitated. One moved an inch too far. The small chip embedded in my palm sent a signal. Boom. A massive tremor shook the chamber. The entire platform shuddered. Lights flickered. Some even burst and rained sparks down like fireflies gone rogue. Screams escalated. Panic turned to outright terror. A shockwave. Controlled. Precision. Deep below the council complex, one of the orbital defense systems had just gone offline, permanently. I turned and finally let some of the fury out of my voice. "You glassed 2 of our colonies. You assassinated our governor on Althea Prime. You sabotaged our trade routes and sent pirates after civilian freighters. You call this peace?" The Zakar delegate screeched, her mandibles twitching. "We were within our rights. Humanity expanded without council approval." I stepped closer to her pedestal until I could see my reflection in her compound eyes. Unblinking. Cold. Surgical. "Funny. You didn't care about approval when your fleets were stealing our mining stations, or when your death squads were executing unarmed settlers." "This is madness," cried the gelatinous ambassador from the Nalari quadrant. "This violates every intergalactic law." "Law?" I snapped, cutting him off. "Who do you think wrote those laws? You did, all of you, for yourselves. For centuries, Earth played by your rules, hoping for a seat at your table. We earned it. We bled for it. And you still treated us like dogs." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I walked back to the center. My bootsteps echoed like thunder in the vast hall. "When you bombed Vega V, I held my tongue. When your council branded our soldiers as aggressors, I still came back here. I brought data, testimony, evidence. But every time I showed you truth, you shoved it back in my face with threats and insults." I looked around the chamber, locking eyes with every race that had mocked us for being young, aggressive, primitive. "We begged for justice. You gave us graves." Another screen lit up. This time it showed the orbit of Xanthi 2, a planet under the control of the Thalreen. A transmission blinked across it. "Warning, fleet detected." Thalreen warships rushed to form defensive lines. Too late. Earth's Ghost-class destroyers came in fast, silent, and invisible until the last second. One after another, their hulls lit up with blue flame as railguns fired rounds the size of starships. No one in the council chamber said a word. All you could hear was the distant roar of collapsing pride, streaming live on 100 displays. The Thalreen Chancellor leaned forward, his voice suddenly small. "What do you want?" I smiled. Not wide, just enough to show it was never about negotiation anymore. "You'll return the border systems, all of them, every station, every moon, every inch of space your empires stole from Earth's reach." He looked like he wanted to object. I didn't let him. "You will pay reparations for Vega V. You will issue a public apology, recorded, unedited, unqualified." The insectoid Zakar hissed. "This is blackmail." "No," I said. "This is consequence." I walked over to the master podium, the one reserved only for the council's head speaker. Slowly, deliberately, I placed my hand on it. No one moved to stop me now. They were too afraid I'd destroy the whole building if they did. "You will recognize Earth as an equal, not a servant, not a tool, not your colony." A human assistant, my only ally in that chamber, approached and handed me a data shard. I slotted it into the console. Instantly, every screen lit up with a declaration. "Treaty of Human Sovereignty, immediate ratification demanded." "If you don't sign this in the next 12 hours, I said slowly, "Earth will not stop at your borders. We will dismantle your fleets, torch your military outposts, and leave your empires in dust." A long pause. Then, from the top tier of the council, a delegate finally spoke. One of the elder species, wrinkled, wise, half-transparent. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "you're burning centuries of diplomacy with one match." I looked him straight in the eye. "Good," I said. "Let it burn." I walked out of that chamber like a man leaving a funeral. Except this time, it wasn't humans in the caskets. It was their arrogance, their dominance, their assumed superiority. Back on my cruiser, I stared out the viewport as the stars blurred past. Orders were already being transmitted. Our fleets wouldn't strike unless pushed further. But they were holding the noose tightly now. And everyone knew it. I went to the war room. A handful of admirals were already watching council comm channels. The chatter was a storm of panic. Some races wanted to surrender immediately. Others begged for negotiation. A few, foolish, proud, began calling in reinforcements to their home systems. Let them. We had blueprints of every fleet. We'd studied every weakness. Earth hadn't just prepared for this day. We'd spent 50 years crafting it. The plan was never revenge. It was respect. The kind earned in blood and fire. A young lieutenant walked in, face pale. "Sir, word from Earth Command. Presidents signed full authorization for planetary defense strikes if provoked. We're officially at military readiness level 1. "Sir?" I turned to him. He was barely 20, too young to remember the old humiliations, the endless years Earth begged for admission into the Council and was laughed out the door, too young to remember the time humans were forced to wear locator chips when traveling to other worlds, like pets. But he'd remember this. Everyone would. "War was never our first option," I said, looking out at the stars again. "But when you corner a species long enough, eventually it stops trying to be civil." The next 12 hours were a blur of diplomacy disguised as damage control, but I wasn't buying any of it. Every minute, new communiques flashed across my command deck's central table, translated from a dozen languages, most of them laced with panic. Delegates who once called Earth a primitive rock with ambition were now begging for an audience. Some offered bribes, others pleaded for ceasefires, and a few, still clutching their outdated pride, issued threats. Empty ones. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I walked the length of the Indomitable, Earth's first fully autonomous flagship. She was nearly a city in space, humming with nuclear pulse engines and the silent menace of orbital warheads that had never seen battle. Until now. As I passed crew members, they saluted. Their faces were hardened, not out of hate, but out of exhaustion. They'd watched the Council walk over us for years, watched as our colonies were stripped for resources and our scientists mysteriously disappeared during Council inspections. They weren't hungry for blood. They were hungry for justice. I entered the observation deck and stared out at the distant swirl of Council space. An entire sector built on peace treaties no one honored. The illusion of unity. The mirage of mutual respect. Behind me, Fleet Admiral Harrow cleared his throat. "Sir," he said, voice like gravel, 10 more systems have just gone dark. Looks like the Thalreen are retreating into their core worlds. Let them, I said without turning. They'll either sign or burn. He walked up beside me. Older than me by 15 years, Harrow had served through the colony raids. He'd seen good men gutted by council mercenaries while Earth was told to be patient. He wasn't a man who flinched easily. Never thought I'd see the day, he muttered. You think I went too far? I asked. He was quiet for a moment. Then shook his head. I think we waited too long. He handed me a datapad. Council has scheduled an emergency vote. They're rattled. You've got support from the Rim Coalition now. Even a few of the mid-core traders are siding with Earth. They don't want to end up next. Good, I said. Fear is finally doing what reason couldn't. I paused. Then added, How's Vega V? His jaw tightened. We have boots on the ground, recovery teams. But there's nothing left. Radiation's bad. We'll be burying pieces for years. I nodded once, slowly. That was the thing about galactic politics. Death never made the headlines. It was always just a strategic misstep or a tragic event pending investigation. I'd seen too many parents kneel in the ash of their homes to stomach another condolence letter. A message pinged across my interface. Harrow read it over my shoulder. Council transmission. Encrypted. Marked urgent. I opened it. A hologram shimmered to life in front of us. The image of Chancellor Veyron, the Thalreen snake who once sneered every time I spoke, now looked like a man clinging to a cliff. His voice was polished, but the fear leaked through. Ambassador, we acknowledge Earth's grievances. The Council is prepared to discuss terms, but we request a temporary suspension of your fleet's advance while negotiations are underway. I didn't even blink. I pressed one button. Decline. Another ping came seconds later. From the Nellery delegate. More cautious, more subtle. Earth has earned its place. We propose a new council structure with shared leadership. Let us talk. Another ping. Another. Now they were tripping over each other to apologize. The same species that wouldn't grant us basic rights were now painting us as saviors. Convenient when they were the ones staring down the barrels of our warships. I turned to Harrow. They think this is about the Council. He nodded. It's not. Not anymore. No, I agreed. This is about telling the galaxy that Earth doesn't get stepped on. I stepped away from the window and headed back toward the war room. The next part would be delicate, but necessary. My declaration wasn't just for vengeance. It was for reshaping the future. Earth would never beg again. We weren't just joining the table, we were flipping it over. The war room was alive with energy. Dozens of officers lined the central holomap. Systems blinked red where Earth's fleets had blockaded Council supply routes. Key trade sectors were already under siege, not attacked, just held. We didn't need to fire to win, we just needed to choke the galaxy's oxygen supply until it begged for air. I stepped into the center and cleared my throat. Put it on record, I said. Begin transmission. The hologram lights adjusted as cameras locked onto me. This message wasn't just for the Council. It was for every planet that ever wondered if Earth would fight back. This is Ambassador Wren of the Terran Accord, I began. To the Council and all aligned empires, you've made your position clear, and now, so have we. I paused just long enough for the words to burn. Effective immediately, Earth declares unilateral sovereignty over all previously disputed sectors. Any attempt to breach these borders will be considered an act of war. I shifted slightly. My voice dropped lower, quieter, deadlier. You treated Earth like a slave. You robbed us. You mocked us. You slaughtered our citizens and called it policy. You thought we were too small, too fragmented, too human to fight back. I looked into the lens like it was the eyes of a galaxy gone mad. But we are human, and that's why we don't stop. I pressed the final command. The message was beamed across 1,000 systems, translated in every tongue, sent to every channel. By the time I stepped away, the war had already changed shape. It wasn't Earth versus the Council anymore. It was Earth, surrounded by billions watching quietly from the edges, species who'd also been crushed, cheated, enslaved. And now, they saw us standing up. Maybe we weren't just avenging our own. Maybe we were starting something bigger. Later that night, I found myself sitting alone in my quarters, the hum of the engines the only sound. I should have felt victorious. But it wasn't victory I wanted. It was justice. A small tablet sat on my desk. On it was the final video recovered from Vega 5, a father shielding his son as the orbital firestorm consumed their farm. I hadn't deleted it, couldn't, because I needed to remember. There was a knock at my door. Lieutenant Airy stepped in. Young, quiet, loyal to the end. "Sir, I know it's late, but—" She hesitated. "What is it?" I asked, not unkindly. "The Rim Freeholds just sent word. They're abandoning their treaties with the Council. They want to meet. With us." I stared at her. Just a second. Then I nodded. "Schedule it." She looked like she wanted to say more. Finally, she did. "Did we go too far, sir?" I looked at the boy on the video again. Dust falling from the ceiling. The scream that never finished before the feed cut out. "No," I said. "We finally went far enough." The Rim Freeholds were a strange bunch. Scattered across the outermost edges of known space, they were a loose network of merchant worlds, pirate stations, nomadic colonies, and war-born civilizations that had survived by staying just outside the Council's chokehold. Too distant to control, too stubborn to ignore. For centuries, they'd been dismissed as savages and smugglers. Now they were requesting an alliance with Earth. I stood aboard the Indomitable's primary negotiation hall, staring across the holotable at 3 Rim representatives. They appeared via projection. No one trusted face-to-face yet. But even through the hologram, I could feel the shift in tone. Their voices weren't soft. They were cautious, yes, but respectful. No more smirks, no more mocking accents when saying Terran. "We've watched your fleets tear through Council patrols like they were made of paper," said one of them, an old man from Goros III, face full of scars and synthetic eye lenses. "We've hated the Council for decades, but no one ever dared hit them like you just did." I didn't answer right away. I let the moment sit. "We didn't hit them out of ego," I said. "They earned it, over centuries." Another rep, a woman with one cybernetic arm and tribal tattoos down her neck, leaned forward. "We know. We've buried our own under Council fire. We just thought we'd be next once you were done." "You won't be," I replied. "Not if you stand with us." That got their attention. The Freeholds didn't fear war. They lived in it. What they feared was betrayal. They'd seen too many powers make promises, then send bombs when no one was watching. So I spelled it out, plainly. You won't be colonized. You won't be taxed. You won't be disarmed. You fight with Earth, and we treat you like brothers. "And the Council?" the Garros elder asked. "They won't survive the year," I said flatly. "One way or another, they're finished." Silence. Then the nod came. One by one, each rep signed the pact. An old symbol appeared, half Earth insignia, half Freehold banner, a new alliance, born not from politics, but shared scars. 3 hours later, Fleet Admiral Harrow walked into my office with a grim look. "They're cracking," he said, dropping a datapad onto my desk. Council's losing its grip. Trade guilds are pulling out. Midcore Republic just declared neutrality. Cowards, I muttered. Maybe, he shrugged. But that's what happens when the food shipments stop. You don't need missiles when you've got control of the routes. It was true. We hadn't fired a single warhead in days. We didn't need to. Our fleet blockades now strangled 7 of the 11 major hyperlanes used by Council-aligned species. Without those routes, nothing moved. No food, no medicine, no supplies. A slow death wrapped in silence. Harrow handed me another datapad. This one's uglier. I glanced down. Satellite footage. Planet Delthus, an industrial hub once loyal to the Council, was in flames. Riots had broken out when food shortages hit. Civilians stormed government bunkers. Military units refused orders. Civil war? I asked. Looks like it. That was the thing about Empire. It looked invincible until the bottom fell out. And once people realized the fear was fake, they stopped kneeling. I tapped the edge of the datapad. Send a relief ship, quietly. Supplies only, no troops. Harrow raised an eyebrow. Helping a council world? Helping people, I said. That's how we win. Not just with fear, with decency, something the council never understood. He gave a rare nod of approval. You're turning into a politician, Ren. I smirked. Don't insult me. That night, I stood alone in the Indomitable's observation bay again, watching the stars drift by like ghosts. My reflection in the glass looked harder than I remembered. A few more lines. Eyes darker than before. Like something inside me had been replaced with cold iron. Part of me missed the days when Earth just wanted a seat at the table, when I believed peace could be bought with patience and protocol. But Vegafiv had burned that belief to ash. And now, there was only the mission. A chime rang behind me. I turned. Lieutenant Ari stepped in again, holding a smaller datapad this time. There's something you need to see, she said quietly. I took it. The screen flickered on. It was a private message. Not council-coded, not from Earth. Something older. I played it. A shaky voice came through, filtered and encrypted. Male, nervous. This is Operative 771, embedded in Council Intelligence Sector 9. They know. The feed glitched, scrambled, then returned. The Thalreen and Zakar have a fallback plan. If Earth's advance continues, they're preparing to activate a Dead World protocol. Weaponized extinction-level payloads. 4 targets. One of them is Earth. Silence, then static. Message ended. I stared at the screen, hand clenched tight. I didn't say anything for nearly a minute. Then I looked at Ari. Get Harrow. Get every department head. 5 minutes. War Council now. By the time everyone was in the war room, the mood had shifted. The previous calm, the confidence, was replaced by a cold edge. They wouldn't dare, one general said. Firing extinction weapons is suicide. They would, I said, because they're losing, and they've never lost before. Harrow slammed a fist on the table. We stop now, we lose everything. We don't stop, I said. We strike first. That got everyone's attention. Sir? Ari asked carefully. We take out the fallback bases, I said. The storage facilities. Their last cards. How do we even find them? Another officer asked. I turned the table display on and tapped in a code. The map shifted. Earth intelligence had been busy. Satellite scans, informant data, deep space probes. 3 targets flashed red. 1 on a frozen moon in the Othran belt. 1 buried under a former Council prison asteroid, and 1 moving, aboard a mobile stealth carrier that hadn't docked in decades. Commandos? Harrow asked. No, I said. They'd never get close. Then what? I looked up, and for a moment, the fire in me burned brighter than ever. We send a message. An hour later, Earth's deep space comms lit up again. A new broadcast, Uncoded, unfiltered. And this time, I didn't bother with political nuance. I looked straight into the camera and said what needed to be said. To the Council High Command, we know what you're hiding. We know about the Dead World Protocol, the payloads, the desperation. I paused, just enough to let it sink in. You thought you could threaten us with extinction. That fear would make us crawl back. You were wrong. A second screen appeared beside me. Footage from the first strike, one of their hidden depots, destroyed in a flash of blue fire. No survivors. A clean hit. I turned back to the feed. We've neutralized one. The rest are next. We will hunt down every secret weapon, every last contingency, and we'll dismantle your legacy piece by piece. I leaned in, voice sharp now. You wanted war. You wanted terror. You wanted Earth to die on its knees. I stared, unblinking. You just gave us permission to fight like we never have before. The room was silent after the broadcast. Even after I'd signed off, and the message had been pushed across every network in Council space, no one in the command chamber spoke. There wasn't applause, there weren't cheers, just silence. And that was exactly what I wanted. Let the Council hear it. Let every world know. Let the ones hiding their last weapons understand they were no longer in control. The silence was power. Not because it screamed, but because it didn't need to. I stepped away from the terminal, my jaw clenched. My mind wasn't even on the destruction we'd just caused. It was already on the next two targets. The second one would be harder, hidden on a former prison asteroid, heavily guarded, rotating crew, automated defense systems that hadn't seen a shutdown command in 2 decades. That facility wasn't designed to be visited. It was designed to disappear. But we had eyes inside. Operative 771 had sent one more encrypted burst. A layout, security shifts, the exact corridor housing the extinction payload, an orbital kinetic lance capable of cracking open Earth's crust. If it was ever deployed, it would tear the planet in half like rotten fruit. We go now, I told Harrow. No council debates, no warnings. His face was pale, but solid. You're sending the fleet? I shook my head. This one needs a message, not just destruction. A reminder. Harrow raised a brow. You want to go in yourself? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The drop pod slammed into the ice field like a meteor. No warnings, no preamble. 1 minute there was silence on the prison asteroid. Next, 6 humans stood on its crust, ghost-like through the snowstorm, armor coated in black obsidian camo, visors flickering green with synchronized HUDs. I was one of them. No figurehead speeches now, no broadcasts. This was personal. Every person on my team had lost someone on Vega V. We didn't bring diplomats. We brought soldiers, the kind the galaxy forgot Earth still had. We moved silently over the ridgeline, crouched low between fractured ice and buried comm towers. The Thalrene guards never saw us coming. We cut their sensors, jammed their drones, and took out the first 3 sentries without firing a shot. Inside, it was worse. Dim corridors, rusted bulkheads, the stench of rot, oil, and long-forgotten prisoners. They'd turned the old cells into storage vaults, packing them with munitions, chemical stockpiles, and finally, near the core, a black cube sealed behind 6 security doors. The payload. 6 of us stood there, staring at it. I stepped forward, placed a small plasma charge on the casing, just enough to breach. Then I paused. Inside that crate was something designed to erase my species, built by aliens who thought humans were replaceable. That bomb was their answer to rebellion, and part of me wanted to detonate it right there. Let the walls shake, let the crater be a warning. But then I remembered the video. The father. The son. Vega V. They hadn't died for vengeance. They died hoping someone would stop it from happening again. I turned to the team. We disarm it, not destroy. We take it home. Their helmets turned toward me. We let them see it, not just burn it. Let them know how close they came, and why they'll never come that close again. Extraction was dirty. The alarms finally triggered. Enemy fighters swept down like vultures, guns hot and engines screaming. The Indomitable's strike group covered us, blue flame lighting up the void as railgun fire punched through the skies. We escaped with the payload. No casualties, not this time. And the moment we docked, I walked it right into the broadcast chamber. I didn't give the Council a chance to deny it. The bomb was on full display, engraved serial numbers, target data, launch conditions, Earth listed first. This is what they were saving, I said on the live feed. This is what your peacekeepers built while we begged for inclusion. Gasps flooded the Council floor. Most of them were performative. But I didn't care. I wasn't speaking for them anymore. I was speaking to everyone else. Earth isn't here to take power, I said. We're here to break the system that built weapons like this and called them insurance. I stared into the camera. You don't negotiate with people holding extinction in their hands. You stop them. But later that night, I cracked. I didn't plan to, didn't want to. But it came. I sat alone in my quarters, staring at the bomb's casing. They'd locked it in a sealed chamber for now, behind 6 layers of security, but my mind kept pulling me back to it. Every second I stared, it was like I could hear Vega Phi again, hear the static, the screams, the cut-off pleas. A voice behind me spoke. You can't carry it all alone, Rain. I turned. Admiral Harrow stood in the doorway. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. You disarmed their deadliest weapon, he said. You've won over the freeholds. Even the traitors are aligning with Earth now. Why does it still feel like a funeral in here? I looked down. Because I'm still angry, I muttered. Still waiting for someone to say we went too far. And no one has. Not yet. He stepped in slowly, arms folded behind his back. You know what I realized, watching you in that chamber? He asked. I said nothing. You're not doing this out of hatred. You're doing it because you still believe something better can be built after the dust settles. I scoffed. Don't put me on a pedestal, Harrow. He smiled grimly. Not trying to. I'm just saying, don't lose that hope. Don't let their darkness become yours. He turned to leave, then stopped. You're not the man who burned Vega Phi, he said over his shoulder, but you might become him, if you forget why you started this. And then he was gone. The next day, a message came from an unlikely source. One of the Council's original founders, the Velethi, an ancient, dying race with no army, no weapons, just memory. They requested an audience, alone. I agreed. Their envoy appeared via hologram, a translucent-skinned elder with no name, just a designation, Speaker of the Memory Rings. Ambassador, he said, voice calm, we have watched you, watched the Council, watched this war unfold. I said nothing. The galaxy changes. The system we helped build, once meant for balance, has become rot. You have exposed it, and for that, you will be remembered. I narrowed my eyes. You're not here to offer thanks. No, the elder admitted. We are here to offer something else. Access. I leaned in. We know the location of the final payload, he said quietly. The one you have not found. The mobile stealth carrier. The one still hunting Earth. That froze my blood. How? We built the cloaking systems, he said, long before the Council turned them to war. He uploaded the coordinates, then added, End this, Ambassador. So the galaxy can begin again. The Velethi's transmission came with exact coordinates, not just a system but a path, a constantly shifting route in deep space, used by a stealth-class war carrier operating under Council Black protocols. The Council never even officially acknowledged its existence. It was their myth, their fail-safe, their final reset button should everything fall apart. Now it was real, and it was hunting Earth. I stood in the war room aboard the Indomitable, watching the coordinates flicker across the 3D holo map. Even with full power, our scanners couldn't detect the ship directly. It moved like a ghost, slipping between gravitational shadows, hiding in the turbulence of collapsing stars. Admiral Harrow stared at the data with me. That carrier isn't just cloaked. It's buried inside space-time itself. You can't detect it with normal sensors. Then we don't use normal sensors, I said. I turned to Lieutenant Ari. Deploy the Vanguard beacons. Full spectrum ping. No filters. Let's shake the shadows loose. She hesitated. Sir, pinging deep space at that frequency will reveal our own fleet positions. I'm counting on it, I said. She gave a stiff nod and moved out. Harrow raised an eyebrow. You're baiting it? I nodded. It's been hiding, because it doesn't know we're ready to die for this. Within the hour, hundreds of beacons launched from strike cruisers and recon ships scattered across the surrounding sectors. They fired bursts of raw signal, unfiltered, untuned, meant to disrupt every particle and ripple across nearby space. The galaxy blinked. And there it was. Faint. Fuzzy. But visible for just 2 seconds. A massive Council war carrier, 3 kilometers long, shaped like a scythe, covered in energy-absorbing plating, its engine trails masked by gravity distortions. It had been hiding behind the event horizon of a rogue black hole, skimming the edge of annihilation just to stay invisible. But Earth's signal bursts had reached it, and now it knew we knew. We didn't wait. 10 destroyers immediately warped toward its last known vector, forming a hammer formation, something designed not to destroy, but to corner. The Indomitable held position from afar, acting as central command. It wasn't just about taking out a ship. This was the last card, the final threat, the one the Council believed would terrify Earth back into submission. If we could kill it, the war would be over. But things never go that clean. Within 15 minutes, the carrier responded. Not with communication, not with demands, with launches. Thousands of autonomous drones, silent, invisible, swarm-like, began to spread across nearby sectors. Each one carried smaller-scale payloads, not world-ending, but enough to cripple our fleet if they struck in concert. Ari called it first. They're not attacking Earth. Harrow caught on. They're creating a dead zone, so we can't follow. They're planning a final launch, I said grimly, and they want the world to watch it happen. I made the call. I couldn't leave this to command chains or delays. I had to go there myself. For the first time since Vega 5, I put on full assault armor. Not for ceremony, but for war. The black plating hissed as it sealed around me. My visor flickered to life, feeding tactical readouts, radiation indexes, environmental hazards. And somewhere beneath all the code, I could still feel the heat of Vega's ashes. I boarded the Vanguard's Blade, our fastest stealth corvette, and ordered it to follow the exact trajectory toward the enemy carrier. Sir, Ari's voice came in through the comms, you're putting yourself in the kill zone. I know. Then why? Because if we fail, I want to look death in the face and spit before it closes in. It took 13 minutes to reach the carrier. It was no longer hiding. The thing floated in space like a scar across the stars. Its armor shimmered with the distortion of space itself. Its main gun, an Extinction-class solar lance, was already charging. The aim was precise. Earth, one shot, one strike, one end. But we had one chance. Using the Vanguard's cloaking field, I docked manually beneath the carrier's underbelly into a forgotten maintenance port too small for scanners to register. I exited alone, a railgun on my back, a demolition kit strapped to my thigh, and 20 minutes of oxygen in my suit. Inside, It was silent. No crew. The ship was entirely AI-operated. No emotion. No regret. Just code. I made my way through the crawl spaces, guided only by partial maps from the Velethi. One wrong turn would trip a security node. But I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for the reactor. The heart. If I could breach it, I could shut the whole thing down. Maybe not destroy it, but stop the weapon from firing. The reactor was a room of nightmares. No sound. Just blue glow. Liquid antimatter flowing through black-veined tubes, pulsing like a heartbeat. One touch of heat, one destabilized charge, and it would take out half the system. And there it was. The launch mechanism, wired into the core. Not automated. Manual. Someone had to push the button, which meant this ship wasn't empty after all. I turned, gun raised. A figure stood in the doorway. Human, older, gray hair, scar over one eye, combat armor from a different era, Council Black Ops. I recognized the face. His name was Commander Reth, Earthborn, presumed dead 22 years ago after a mission gone silent. He smiled faintly. Didn't think they'd send you. I kept my weapon steady. You work for them now? I work for no one, he said. I keep balance. That was the job. You call this balance? I gestured to the reactor. He shrugged. It ends wars. One final strike, no survivors, and no one wants to fight anymore. You think destroying Earth will bring peace? I think if Earth wins, the galaxy burns. I stepped closer. Then you've already lost. He looked at me strangely. Not angry, not even defensive. Just tired. You ever wonder why they hated us so much? He asked. Why Earth was never really allowed into the Council? I didn't answer. Because we're the only ones who still evolve, he said. They're all static. The Thalreen haven't changed in 6,000 years. The Velethi? They're dying, clinging to memory. But us? We adapt. Every war, every scar, we become something new. I said nothing. Let him talk. And they fear that, he said, because they know one day we'll outgrow them all. Then get out of our way. He shook his head. I can't. I made a promise. So did I said. Then I pulled the trigger. The shot hit him in the side, throwing him back into the console. Sparks flew, his armor cracked, but he wasn't dead. He lunged forward, activating the countdown. Too late, he roared. 5 seconds. I dived at the core. 4. Ripped open the panel. 3. Exposed the coolant valves. 2. Punched the override code from the Velethi archive. 1. Shutdown initiated. Silence. The entire carrier dimmed. The weapon deactivated. The glow faded. He stared up at me, coughing blood. You weren't supposed to win. I leaned in. That's the problem, I whispered. You all thought Earth was still asking permission? Then I shut his eyes and walked out. Back aboard the Indomitable, the carrier was now in tow. Lifeless, stripped of power, its payload neutralized. I sent the final message. To the Council, your last weapon is gone. Your last bluff has failed. The age of your rule is over. Earth doesn't need a seat at your table. We've built our own. The transmission ended. Across the stars, no one answered. And that was how I knew it was finally done. Silence ruled the galaxy for the next 24 hours. No threats, no declarations, no last-minute retaliations. The once proud Council, who only weeks ago bombed our colonies and laughed at our protests, had nothing left to say. We'd burned their mask. We'd gutted their bluff. And now we stood in the quiet that follows a storm. The part no one talks about. The part where the survivors realize that just because the battle's over, the damage isn't. The Indomitable floated in low orbit over a Council capital moon, its weapons offline, its posture neutral. We weren't here to conquer. We were here to deliver terms, real ones. the kind that couldn't be rewritten with ink and loopholes, the kind sealed in blood and memory. I stood in the great negotiation chamber, a neutral site, surrounded by dozens of holographic delegates. Most no longer even bothered to hide their fear. Others wore masks of civility. One or two looked openly resentful. That was fine. I didn't come here to be liked. I came to finish what I started. The Velithai Elder, the one who'd given us the coordinates of the final weapon, opened the session with his slow, deliberate voice. Earth has rendered the dead world carrier inoperable, he said. It has claimed responsibility for the Council's destabilization, and it now presents its demands. I didn't step onto the central podium. I didn't need to. I just spoke. Calm, flat, cold. Earth doesn't want a throne. We don't want to rule you. Murmurs flickered. One delegate scoffed quietly. I looked right at him. But we will never kneel again. That shut them up. I took a slow breath. My voice never rose, not once. These are our terms. Every species complicit in the siege of Vega Fifth will release classified military archives. Full disclosure, no edits. Every planet forcibly annexed from Earth's colonies will be returned with all infrastructure intact. The Council Charter will be burned, publicly. You want peace? You earn it from the ground up. You don't get to decide who joins, who's worthy, who's civilized enough. That ends now. A delegate from the Mid-Core Republic, sweating visibly, raised a hand. And if we refuse? I smiled, not warm, not cruel, just final. Then Earth isolates you, he blinked. That's it? You misunderstand, I said. We don't need you anymore. I tapped a button. A second projection appeared, a trade map. Earth now had full trade agreements with the freeholds, the outer reaches, and the mid-galactic rim. Shipping routes, energy exchanges, tech agreements. We've built a coalition outside your control, a parallel economy, a new network, and we've secured our own AI Regulation Council, security agreements, medical exchanges. Another blink of the map. You're not just cut off from Earth, you're obsolete. That was the kill shot. It wasn't the guns. It wasn't the carrier we'd disabled. It was the fact that Earth no longer needed their approval, their currency, or their systems. We were no longer orbiting them. We had become our own gravity. Some delegates panicked right then and there, offers, bargains, speeches about mutual future and intergalactic unity. But I stopped them. This isn't about punishment, I said. It's about truth. I turned the holoprojector again and played the final video. Not a battle, not a strike, but the last transmission from a Vega Phi civilian, a mother holding her dying child in the rubble of what used to be a home. She whispered into the camera, "Don't forget us." Then the image cut. The chamber went quiet. A few delegates looked away. I let the silence sit, heavy and unforgiving. You did that, I said, and you told us it was justified. You called it containing aggression. I stepped back. This is your second chance. Not everyone gets one. They signed the Accord of Independence 1 hour later. Not all. A few abstained. But enough did. Enough to start again. And that night, as I looked down from the viewing bay, watching the fractured council limping forward, I felt no triumph. Just weight, just gravity. The kind you feel when you realize you've become something more dangerous than the enemy you defeated. Admiral Harrow joined me later, as always. The galaxy's changed, he said. It had to, I replied. He handed me a new data pad. They want you to lead the coalition. I stared at the words. Unified Terran Alliance, Provisional Commander Nominee, Ambassador Wren. Tell them no, I said. Harrow frowned. You sure? I nodded. I didn't come here to lead forever. I came to stop a war. You stopped a galaxy. Same thing. I looked out into the stars, trying to remember what it had felt like to believe in peace without a gun pressed to someone's head. "I'll serve," I said, "but only until the new order stabilizes. Then someone else takes over." Harrow shrugged. "They won't like that." I turned to him. "I didn't come here to be liked." He chuckled. "Still the same bastard you were on day one." "No," I said. "That guy still thought this place could be saved." Back on Earth, the news hit like a supernova. Celebrations, mourning, street parades, candlelight vigils. We'd won. But we'd lost, too. Names were still being recovered from the Vega ashes. Colonies still struggled to rebuild. Not everyone came home. But for the first time in generations, humanity wasn't on its knees. We weren't waiting for permission to breathe. I attended a small memorial outside the Capitol. No cameras, no speeches, just a plaque, carved in steel. "For those who burned without being seen. We see you now." That night, I stood alone again, this time not in armor or in command. Just a man, just a name among billions. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just stood there until the sun rose again. Because tomorrow would come. And this time, it would come on our terms. It had been 90 days since the signing of the Accord of Independence. 90 days since the galaxy changed. Since Earth stopped asking to be heard and made the stars listen. And now came the harder part. The part no one ever trains you for. After. The war didn't leave smoke trails behind. It left dust, ghosts, scars in the shape of silence. And everywhere I went, I saw the cost. Not in numbers, not in graphs, not in charts, but in the way people looked at me now. Like I wasn't one of them anymore. I sat inside a transport shuttle en route to Atlas Station, orbiting the neutral colony of Halveth. This place had once been the Council's intelligence hub. Now it served as the provisional capital of the new galactic order, the unified Terran Alliance. I wasn't here to lead it. I was here to leave it. The handoff was scheduled. The successor had been chosen. Someone younger, more flexible, less battle-worn. A diplomat who had spent the war organizing evacuations and preventing massacres instead of making threats. Exactly what the New World needed. Not me. The shuttle touched down, and I was met by 2 security officers. They wore the new crest, half Earth, half Rim Coalition, on their shoulders. They saluted, and I returned a quiet nod. Inside the conference hall, the heads of 15 species were already seated. I recognized the Valethi Elder, flanked by 2 younger aides. Admiral Harrow was seated near the front, wearing his dress blues for the first time in months. I hated the formality of it all. Everything I fought to burn had now been rebuilt. But maybe that's the point. You destroy something only so something better can rise from the ash. I stood before them all, not on a podium, just at the floor level. When I spoke, I didn't raise my voice. "You don't need another speech, you've heard mine." Some light chuckles, mostly nervous. "You don't need another declaration. We already signed one. You don't need another threat. We already survived the last one." A pause. "You need peace. A peace that doesn't come with chains or ultimatums. One built on truth." On memory, I glanced down. "I'm not a leader. I'm a soldier who got tired of burying civilians. I'm a diplomat who ran out of lies. I'm a man who carried a message far too long and far too loud." I looked at Harrow. He nodded once. "I am stepping down, effective now." The chamber stirred. "I don't want a legacy. I want a future. And I want people to remember that peace didn't come from power. It came after it." I turned and left before anyone could object. Because I wasn't asking. Back on the shuttle, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The armor was gone, the uniform folded in my bag, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to reach for a weapon every time someone approached. Ari met me on the lower deck, arms crossed, holding a data slate. "You're really doing it?" she asked. I nodded. "You've got the better job now." She smiled. "No, I don't. I have the impossible one." I looked out the viewport. A new station was being constructed above Halveth. Transparent towers, collaborative chambers, tech hubs pulling from dozens of cultures. I pointed. "You build something that lasts up there? That speaks louder than everything I've done." She went quiet, then said, "Where will you go?" I shrugged. "Somewhere without flags." I left that same night. No parades, no send-off. Just a small ship, a neutral signature, and an outbound course toward an unclaimed sector in the fringe. For the first 2 weeks, I didn't speak to anyone, didn't answer transmissions, didn't check the news feeds, I just drifted. There was a kind of healing in that, drifting. Not escaping, just uncoiling, like a spring finally unwinding after being wound too tight for too long. Eventually, I found a place. A planet with no name, just a designation. Temperate, untamed, a few settlers, no real infrastructure. The kind of place you go when you're done trying to be someone important. I bought a small plot of land, built a home out of nothing but old scrap and repurposed alloys. And for the first time in decades, I planted something. Actual seeds, not ideology, not orders, just food. Tomatoes, potatoes, grain that would take years to mature. No one cared who I was out here, and I never told them. But sometimes I'd get visitors. A pilot who once flew with Earth's Black Ops, a Valethi youth who'd grown up reading about the war, a freehold merchant who remembered the time we first broadcasted our demands. And every time they came, they'd ask the same thing. "Do you regret it?" I'd always pause before answering. Because the truth was, sometimes, yes. I regretted how it had to be done. I regretted how many had to die for the galaxy to see clearly. But I never regretted doing it, because without it, we'd still be begging, we'd still be bleeding. 10 years passed. Ari sent messages now and then. Harrow retired quietly. The new coalition grew, colonies rebuilt. Some worlds left, others joined. But no one bombed us again. No one insulted Earth in those chambers anymore. And no one ever forgot what happened at Vega Fjorth. They turned the site into a memorial now. I never visited. I didn't have to. Because every time I looked at the sky from my quiet little porch, I remembered that girl running across the ash fields, that father shielding his son, that city turned to dust because some alien race thought fear was the only language worth speaking. And then I remembered how we answered. We didn't answer with mercy. We didn't answer with compromise. We answered in the only voice they would understand. You wanted war? You got it. But now, maybe, just maybe, what we got next would be something better.